Today we're going to be talking about our pedestal mounting system. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is, how you mount it to your SLAVX Tabletop Avionics panel, why we can do this from a design and engineering perspective, and then also give a few examples of different pedestals that we've done in the last few months. So keep it right here and let's get started. Okay, so our pedestal mounting system came to be about 3 months after we launched our initial lineup of SLAVX Tabletop Avionics panels. Our original lineup, a lot of it was actually based on the Logitech yoke and throttle. And so the yoke was in a pretty traditional position. However, the throttle was far off to the right side of the panel. And what that did is it had everything sort of above the tabletop from mounting into the panel perspective, right? So there was really nothing kind of hanging lower where a more traditional throttle would be located when you're actually flying a general aviation aircraft. And so some customers, they thought it was a little bit kind of far over to sort of reach as they were actually sitting at their panel and using it. And so we said, okay, this is really valuable feedback for us. Let's develop a better solution. And so what we actually came out with was the pedestal mounting system. This here is really our most traditional pedestal mounting system here. It's a bracket that basically affixes to the base of the panel. And I'll actually walk through how you actually mount a pedestal to the panel itself, the bolts, the nuts. We actually give you everything in your purchase to do that. But basically it mounts to the panel and it sits and it allows you to mount your throttle right next to it. And so it's a very natural location for where the throttles are in the plane as you're actually flying it. And so we came out with this. It is most commonly used with the Yoko yoke setups. That was basically the most common place that these are used. You really don't use pedestal mounting systems with the Honeycomb Alpha or Bravo. It's actually really not possible. A few people have asked us if we can mount the Bravo on the pedestal. It's not really how the whole thing works. There's actually another video that I talk about how you mount your Honeycomb components into the panel. But really the pedestal is designed for panels that have either the Logitech yoke or the Virtual Fly Yoko as well. So when it comes to the engineering and the design of this component, the reason that we can do this is because everything is an all metal construction. Okay, it's very strong, it's thick steel, it's very durable, and that gives us the ability to shape the metal to give it form, strength, and function, and basically be able to have it work. Okay, it's just as simple as that. I'm going to get into some really elaborate pedestals that we've done too, and how we basically add bracing to them to make them really, really stiff so you don't have a ton of flex. So once again, here's a much more traditional panel. It's a customer panel. It's got the Yoko. The Yoko has the extended desk clamp, so it's going to actually mount to the desk. And so the actual panel and everything is mounted to the desk very secure. And then the pedestal basically slides right on top of the base where the holes are also basically pre-slotted and drilled. And then you've got hardware. You got a bolt that basically goes in through the top, you have a washer underneath, and then you have a nut underneath. And I'm going to actually walk through actually securing a pedestal to the panel itself. But really, we just want to try to give an overview of the pedestal system, what you can do with it, different components that you can mount to it, from yokes, throttles, autopilots, GCU, little keypads. There's a lot of different things that you can actually mount to the pedestal system. This here is an example of one that we just finished for a customer. This is a much more elaborate pedestal mounting system. You can see there's actually room for a V3RNIO throttle, a desktop aviator flap lever, and then down here is actually going to be a Logitech trim wheel. Technically a SATEC trim wheel, I guess. But down here is going to be that space for that. And you'll be able to see this will actually mount right here, just like so. And so I'm going to actually walk through actually mounting it to the panel, and you can actually see how that whole piece works. So so that's basically mounting of everything. We do a lot of different custom pedestals. I'll walk through some of the different examples. But first, let's talk a little bit about mounting into the panel. isn't really too tough. What we recommend is actually with an empty panel where you don't have so much weight in the panel already, is you actually take it and you just slide it off your desk just a little bit. Take your pedestal, you kind of put it with your legs here. Now it does help to have a second hand here, actually kind of holding the panel if you don't mind, you know, getting an extra hand, it definitely help you. But basically you take it here, you line it up with the 4 holes. Once the 4 holes are lined up, you put your bolt, or your screw rather, through there. And then take your washer, and there's also a nut as well. And we give you all the hardware to actually do this, but you put these together here, take the Allen key, those lined up, and you go ahead and you tighten it down. Okay, now I'm not going to walk through all 4 bolts, but it's basically that exact same concept for each bolt. And then you just back it up right here, and then it sits just like so. So really nice, really simple, and what it does is it gives you a platform that you can have different components. So once again, this here is the VRNIO throttle. This VRNIO throttle is going to slide into here, and it will actually mount with the 4 mounting holes. As you can see here, there's 4 mounting holes. There's 4 mounting holes on the bottom of the VRNIO. Take that, slide that in there. Now the VRNIO is mounted there. So once this whole piece is an entire unit, if you do want to move it on and off of your tabletop, we actually recommend you take the whole panel off and put it in a separate location that actually is elevated just like a tabletop. And that's because if you put the pedestal here on the ground against the panel, I mean, it's going to kind of tip over. It needs to still be on a nice flat surface that's still elevated. So this is just real quick. So that's mounting the pedestal, you know, into the actual panel itself. Obviously, there's a little bit of flex there because we haven't tightened down all 4 screws and nuts and bolts. But there are standoffs on the bottom of the panel to be able to elevate it a little bit off of your tabletop. And what that does, as well as with the length of the screws, is it prevents the bottom of the screws touching your tabletop and actually scratching it. So once again, we give you all the hardware to do this. Now, other customers have very, I'll call it, you know, elaborate setups, and they've actually had a permanently affixed panel to their tabletop solution. And what they've done is they've actually drilled through, you know, basically the panel, the pedestal, and they've actually secured the entire panel and pedestal permanently to a tabletop, so like to a wood tabletop. And there's some pictures of that here in the video too, so you can see that. But that's another thing that people have done as well. The main thing is you have the holes to be able to secure it. So, you know, this is just one example of a pedestal. I'll talk about a few other examples of pedestals, some designs that we've done, and then you can get a better understanding of some different ideas as well, and kind of compatibility if you're looking at this pedestal mounting solution. Okay, so I'll walk through a single, double, and triple pedestal here next. So this here is a single pedestal. This is most commonly used for a single Logitech ProFlight throttle or a Aviatek trim wheel. So that's what this here is. This is a single. We've also got a double. This double, as you can see, it's kind of too wide, is most commonly made for a Logitech TQ6. We can custom make these for a dual Logitech throttle or a single Logitech throttle, as well as Aviatek trim wheel if you want that kind of package together. Not so common anymore, but we can make those. But this one here is set up for a Virtual Fly TQ6. And then the final one here, this is a double mounting plate, but it's got a triple configuration. And so this was actually used for a multi-engine customer, 2 Logitech throttles, and then 1 Aviatek trim wheel for this example. So once again, you know, it kind of hangs off there. Still connects to the panel. It's all one unit, but you can get a better understanding for the single, double, and triple. Okay, gonna walk through a couple more, slightly more elaborate pedestals here. So this is actually a pedestal that was designed for a GFC 500 autopilot, and then a GCU, RealSimGear GCU keypad for the Cirrus, and then a VirtualFly TQ6 throttle. So basically this is a little bit different configuration, but once again you can see here how we do this with all the structural support and everything. It still makes a very nice, rigid, solid product. This is a little bit similar in characteristics to our TBM pedestal. You can see the separate TBM video, but we walk through a lot of different pedestals. Once again, it's got the TBM switch box, support for the TQ6 throttle, and then the keypad as well, the GCU keypad. So once again, a lot of different back bracing here, a lot of different gusset support, helps to give all that strength into the actual pedestal itself. So we're going to walk through one final kind of set of pedestals. They're a lot longer pedestals, they're quite large, so we'll walk through those samples here next. Okay, so walking through the last two pedestals here. Once again, these are pretty long pedestals. Once again, these are all customizable to the customer for the layout that they wanted and the kind of the spacing they wanted. So, this here was actually developed for the TQ6 throttle, and TQ6 basically sat like that, and then it also was compatible with the VRNIO. And so this was a customer who wanted kind of the best of both worlds here from a throttle perspective, either to use the more traditional general aviation levers or the levers here. So this was an example there, the TQ6 and VRNIO. Once again, you can kind of see that there for size. And then this was a real long pedestal, but once again, support for the VRNIO, the TQ6, and then a Logitech either ProFlight throttle or SATEC trim wheel. I believe in this instance it was actually the SATEC trim wheel. But once again, you can see quite long. You notice here the strength supports on the side, the gussets. Once again, we can only do this because of the materials we're working with, the steel, the bending, the strength, all that. So this is basically an overview of the pedestal mounting system. We hope you find it informative, beneficial, how it works, how you're able to customize it, and then also how you install it into the panels. So we'll see you guys. Any questions, let us know. Stay level.